My mother didn't hesitate. She didn't lower her voice. She didn't even look uncomfortable. "You're not half the man your sister is," she said it across the dinner table like she was commenting on the weather. For a second, the room tilted. The hum of the ceiling fan grew louder. The smell of overcooked pot roast turned metallic in my nose. I felt every year I'd stayed quiet tighten in my chest at once. I pushed my chair back slowly. The legs scraped across hardwood, sharp and deliberate. Then, "She can start paying your mortgage." Forks froze midair. Claire's smile flickered. My father blinked like he'd misheard me. "What mortgage?" he asked, his voice thin. "What are you talking about?" But the silence that followed wasn't confusion. It was fear. I didn't sit back down. I didn't raise my voice either. I just stood there, steady, watching the color drain from their faces. 3 years, 36 payments, wire transfers sent before dawn so no one at work would see my hands shake. And somehow, in this house, I was still the disappointment. The truth hanging between us that night was heavy enough to break glass. But even then, standing in my parents' dining room in Fort Worth, watching them scramble, the real damage hadn't started yet, because what I was about to expose wasn't just money. It was the story they'd been telling about who mattered in this family. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't going to let them finish it without me. My name is Ethan Cole. For most of my life, I've been the quiet one in a family that never runs out of words, especially when those words are about my sister. People mistake quiet for weakness. It isn't. Silence is a skill. I learned it early. In my parents' house, the loudest person wins. The rest of us adapt, on paper. My life is stable, predictable, controlled. I'm an operations finance manager for a commercial construction supply company in Dallas. My days are built on forecasts, cost reports, freight margins, and numbers that either add up or they don't. Steel shipments, equipment contracts, multi-state distribution schedules. If something's off, I find it. If something's bleeding money, I stop it. Numbers make sense. They follow rules. People don't. I work in a glass building overlooking a stretch of highway that never sleeps. Trucks move, deadlines move, I move with them. My office smells like black coffee and printer toner. My keyboard clicks in steady rhythm. No drama, no applause, just results. I go home to a one-bedroom apartment with concrete floors and a balcony facing west. I keep it clean. Boots lined up by the door. Countertops clear. One cast iron pan, one decent knife. Some nights I cook steak, some nights I eat in silence and watch the city lights flicker on. It's mine. Every inch of it. But every Friday, I drive 40 minutes west to my parents' 2-story house in a Fort Worth suburb where hedges are trimmed too neatly and appearances matter more than truth. The moment I walk through that front door, I'm not Ethan, the man who runs million-dollar budgets. I'm the reliable son, the one who doesn't complain, the one who can handle it. And across that dinner table, no matter how much I've built on my own, I'm still cast in Claire's shadow. And in that house, shadows last longer than they should. Claire has always been the story my parents preferred to tell. Older by 3 years, taller, louder. The kind of person who walks into a room and assumes it belongs to her. In high school, she argued her way into debate trophies and student council speeches. In college, she earned a scholarship to a top law program. By 28, she was already working at a firm in Dallas that sounded impressive enough to repeat at every holiday gathering. My parents didn't just admire her. They built narratives around her. At Thanksgiving, it was Claire's latest case. At Christmas, Claire's promotion. At random Sunday dinners, her clients. Her billable hours. Her future partnership track. Her name moved through conversations like currency. I learned early that mine didn't. It wasn't that my parents disliked me. They didn't. I was the steady one, the practical one, the son who didn't need much. When I was 17, I got a part-time job stocking shelves at a warehouse on the edge of town. Nobody asked me to. I just did it. Tuition wasn't going to wait for anyone's pride. I worked late shifts, lifting boxes under fluorescent lights while Claire studied for the LSAT at the kitchen table with my mom bringing her tea. In college, I worked 2 jobs, early mornings unloading delivery trucks, weekends doing inventory audits for a regional supplier. I paid my own tuition in installments that hurt every time they cleared my account. No one clapped. No one needed to. Claire's achievements were visible. Mine were functional. When she bought her first condo, my parents hosted a celebration dinner. Toasts were made, Photos were taken. When I paid off my last student loan at 24, I didn't tell anyone. I just closed the browser tab and went to work the next morning. Over time, a pattern settled in. Claire was the pride, I was the backup plan. If something broke, I'd fix it. If something went wrong, I'd handle it. My parents leaned on me differently. Not emotionally, practically. You're strong, my dad would say. You don't let things get to you, my mom would add. It wasn't praise, it was assignment. The truth is, being the reliable one is its own kind of invisibility. You don't get spotlight, you get responsibility, and I carried it without argument. When my parents mentioned money stress for the first time 3 years ago, it didn't come as a demand. It came wrapped in embarrassment. A few bad months, medical bills, property taxes that hit harder than expected, just until we get back on our feet, my mother said. Don't tell your sister, my father added. She has enough pressure. That part stuck. Claire had pressure. I had capacity, so I stepped in. At first, it was one payment, then another. Then a quiet agreement that I'd cover it for a little while longer. Each month came with a variation of the same line. Just this month. We'll manage next time. Don't let the bank send anything official. 3 years passed that way. 36 months of being the solution no one discussed. Meanwhile, at every dinner, Claire remained the family's success story, and I remained the son who could carry it. What no one ever asked was how long I intended to, or what would happen if I stopped. Friday dinners at my parents' house follow a script. Same driveway, same porch light humming above the door, same faint smell of rosemary and overcooked meat drifting through the hallway. My mother moves between stove and counter like she's rehearsed the choreography for years. My father pours iced tea into the same heavy glasses. Claire usually arrives 10 minutes late, confident enough to make an entrance. There's comfort in repetition. There's also control. By the time I take my seat at the dining table, I already know how the night will unfold. Claire will talk, my parents will amplify, I'll listen. If I speak, it'll be measured, brief, easy to move past. It's not hostility, it's gravity. Everything bends toward her. But the Friday before everything broke felt different. I noticed it the moment I stepped inside. My mother's smile held too long. My father kept clearing his throat like he was working up to something. Claire looked pleased, not just her usual self-satisfaction. This was sharper, anticipatory, like someone waiting for applause before the performance even started. I hung my jacket on the back of my chair and watched. The table was set more formally than usual. Cloth napkins instead of paper. A bottle of wine already uncorked. My mother adjusted the silverware twice, though it was already straight. My father checked his phone, then put it face down, then picked it up again. Storm signals. I've spent my career reading numbers for patterns. Families have them too. The trick is knowing when a routine has shifted. Dinner began the same way it always did. Small talk about traffic, weather, a neighbor selling their house, but underneath it, something coiled tight. Claire kept glancing at my parents like they were about to hand her a medal. My mother gave me quick assessing looks when she thought I wasn't watching. Measuring, calculating. I set my fork down between bites, feeling it. An announcement was coming. I didn't know what it was yet. I didn't know how deep it ran, but I knew I was walking into something rehearsed. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like the quiet son attending dinner. I felt like a man being positioned. The shift came right after my father poured the wine. So, my mother began, folding her hands together like she was opening a ceremony. Claire has some exciting news. Claire gave a practiced sigh. It's not that big of a deal. It always was. She's presenting at the state bar conference next month, my father said. Pride swelling in his voice. They asked her personally. My mother beamed at her. Out of everyone in her firm, Claire tilted her head, pretending humility. They said they needed someone sharp, someone who could handle pressure. I took a slow sip of water. Let them have it, I told myself. This is what Fridays are for. My dad leaned back in his chair. You've always had that presence, he told her. Leadership, confidence. My mother nodded. She was born for it. Born for it. The phrase hung in the air. I chewed slowly, the steak cooling on my plate. Earlier that day, I'd closed a budget gap that would have cost my company nearly $500,000 over the next quarter. I'd stayed late for 2 weeks running projections, finding the leak, cutting it clean. No one at this table would ever know. Still, I tried. We wrapped a regional expansion audit this week, I said evenly. Turned around a pretty serious cost overrun. My director's pushing it to corporate. My mother didn't even look at me. That's good, Ethan, she said, distracted. But Claire's work impacts people's lives. Courtrooms, policy, it's different. Different. My father nodded. Law is high stakes. So is keeping a business from bleeding out, I thought. But I didn't say it. Claire smiled at me thin. Polite. The kind of smile you give a kid who wants credit for cleaning his room. You've always been good with numbers, she said. It suits you. Suited me. Like it was a uniform I'd been assigned. The conversation rolled forward without me. They asked Claire about the hotel, the audience size, the kind of questions she might get. My mother refilled her glass before it was half empty. My father laughed at a story that wasn't funny. I sat there, steady, watching the pattern repeat. It wasn't one big insult that did the damage, it was the accumulation. The casual dismissals, the reframing, the constant elevation of one child while the other was treated like infrastructure, useful, necessary, invisible. I didn't resent Claire for succeeding. I resented the way success had been defined in this house. Spotlight counted, stability didn't, and as the night moved forward, I could feel something building behind my ribs. Not anger exactly. Pressure. Because this wasn't just another Friday. This was groundwork. And whatever announcement they'd prepared, I had a feeling it wasn't going to include me. My father set his glass down and wiped his mouth with his napkin. Speaking of responsibility, he said, glancing at Claire. We've been sorting through some mortgage paperwork lately. Claire helped us organize a few things. She's been a real blessing. Blessing. The word hit harder than it should have. Claire shrugged lightly. It was just paperwork. They get overwhelmed. Overwhelmed. My grip tightened around my fork. Mortgage paperwork. 3 years of bank transfers pulsed at the back of my mind. The 15th of every month. Automatic at first, then manual. When I wanted to be sure it cleared, I knew the exact remaining balance. The interest rate, the escrow adjustments, paperwork. My mother smiled at Claire like she'd just hung the moon. We don't know what we'd do without you. Something cold slid down my spine. I remembered the first call. My mother's voice, low, embarrassed. Just until we stabilize, I remembered my father saying, "Don't tell your sister. She has enough on her plate. Just this month. Don't let the bank send anything official. We'll handle next time." I'd postponed enrolling in a certification program because of those payments. Delayed looking at condos. Watched my savings stall while telling myself it was temporary. And now the narrative was shifting, not quietly. Publicly. I set my fork down carefully. The sound of metal touching porcelain felt louder than it should have. Blessing. That was the word. And in that moment, I understood something clearly. They weren't just grateful, they were rewriting. My mother must have seen something change in my face. She tilted her head the way she always does when she's about to correct me. Calm, superior, certain. And then she said it. "You're not half the man your sister is." No hesitation, no anger. Just fact. As far as she was concerned, the room didn't go quiet. It snapped. I felt myself sit up straighter. Felt the chair legs scrape across the hardwood as I pushed back. Years of swallowed responses gathered in my throat, not loud. Not explosive, just finished. I met her eyes. "Then she can start paying your mortgage." The words landed flat and clean. Claire's smile disappeared. My father blinked. "What mortgage?" he asked. Confusion bleeding into his voice. "What are you talking about?" I didn't look at him. I kept my eyes on my mother. The one I've been covering for 3 years. 3 pairs of eyes widened at once. Shock, denial, calculation. My mother recovered first. "Ethan, don't be dramatic. We never asked you to." "You did," I cut in, my voice even. "Every month. Just this once. We'll handle next time. Don't let the bank send a notice." My father's face drained of color. "That's not appropriate to bring up at dinner," he said quietly. There it was. The reflex to bury it. "What's not appropriate," I said, "is pretending Claire saved this house." Claire finally found her voice. "Ethan, I never said I paid anything. You didn't correct it either." Silence again. Thicker this time. I could see it happening in real time, their attempt to reshape the story, to smooth the edges, to move this back into a private conversation where I could be managed. My mother's tone softened. "We were going to fix it." When I asked. No answer. I felt something settle inside me. Not rage, not even hurt. Clarity. For 3 years, I'd been the solution they didn't acknowledge, the safety net they never named, and now, When it was convenient, I was disposable. I stood fully, hands resting on the back of my chair. "I have the transfers," I said, "every one of them." My father opened his mouth, then closed it. Claire looked smaller somehow, not innocent, just exposed. For the first time in my life at that table, I didn't shrink to keep the peace. I didn't apologize for existing. I simply let the truth sit there between us, uncomfortable, undeniable, irreversible. And once it was spoken, there was no putting it back. No one tried to stop me when I stepped away from the table. That was the part that stayed with me later. Not outrage, not apology. Just silence. I grabbed my jacket from the back of the chair. The house felt smaller as I walked toward the door. My father said my name once low, uncertain, but he didn't follow. Outside, the Texas night air was cool and dry. I stood on the driveway for a second, breathing it in. My hands weren't shaking, they were steady. The drive back to Dallas passed in a blur of highway lights and dark stretches of open road. I didn't turn on the radio, I didn't call anyone. There was nothing left to process. By the time I unlocked my apartment door, the decision had already been made. I set my keys in their usual spot, took off my watch, opened my laptop at the kitchen counter. Bank portal, log in, mortgage account, automatic payment scheduled for the 15th. I clicked on it. Cancel recurring transfer. A small box appeared on the screen. "Are you sure you want to stop this payment?" I didn't hesitate. "Yes." The confirmation notice popped up. Clean, final. For the first time in 3 years, my account wouldn't drain because someone else had mismanaged theirs. I closed the laptop. It wasn't dramatic. It was a line. And I had just stepped over it. Canceling the payments should have felt like victory. It didn't. It felt like space. The 15th came and went without the usual notification. No outgoing transfer, no dip in my balance. I checked the account twice anyway, out of habit. 3 years trains you like that. My parents didn't call. They didn't text. The silence was deliberate. So was mine. I started running in the mornings along the Trinity River Trail before work. At first, it was just to burn off the restlessness sitting under my skin. The rhythm of my feet hitting pavement gave my thoughts somewhere to go. Inhale, exhale, repeat. Control what you can. I signed up for a Saturday boxing class at a gym downtown. Heavy bag. Wrap your hands. Hit something that doesn't hit back. The trainer didn't ask questions. He just corrected my stance and told me to keep my guard up. That advice applied to more than boxing. On Thursdays, I stopped eating takeout and started cooking properly again. Simple meals, measured ingredients, heat you can adjust, results you can see. The order helped, with distance. The pattern became obvious. Just this month, every "don't tell your sister." Every time they praised Claire while I quietly wired money to keep the lights on, in a house that didn't feel like mine anymore. I didn't feel rage about it. I felt clarity. They hadn't hated me. They had relied on me. And reliance without acknowledgement turns into entitlement fast. By the 3rd week, something shifted. My shoulders felt lighter. My sleep got deeper. The constant low-grade tension I'd carried for years started to thin out. I wasn't their safety net anymore. I was just a man paying his own bills in an apartment that belonged entirely to him. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough. The photo came on a Sunday morning. I was halfway through my coffee. Sunlight cutting across the concrete floor of my apartment. When my phone buzzed, the name on the screen surprised me. Mrs. Alvarez, my parents' neighbor. She'd lived next door for as long as I could remember. The kind of woman who watered her lawn at dawn and noticed every car that pulled into the street. I almost ignored it. Instead, I opened the message. It was a picture. My parents' house, the same brick exterior, the same oak tree in the front yard, but stretched across the porch railing was a white banner with gold lettering. "Congratulations, Claire, for keeping our family home in the family." I stared at it. Kept our family home, Claire. My thumb hovered over the screen as if zooming in would change the words. It didn't. Mrs. Alvarez followed up with another message. "Thought you'd want to see this. So proud of your sister." Proud. My jaw tightened. For a second, everything went quiet in my apartment. No traffic noise, no hum of the refrigerator. Just that banner burned into my vision. 3 years, 36 payments. Transfers scheduled before sunrise so no one at the office would ask questions. Certifications postponed. Savings stalled. Plans delayed. And now the public version of the story had been finalized. Claire savior. Me non-existent. I didn't feel tears. I didn't feel anger in the explosive sense. I felt something colder. They hadn't just minimized what I'd done. They had replaced it. rewritten the history of that house as if I had never stood behind it. Month after month, keeping the bank from sending notices they were too embarrassed to open. It wasn't private anymore. It wasn't a family misunderstanding. It was a lie hanging over the front porch for the entire neighborhood to see. That's what changed it. If they had kept it inside those walls, maybe I would have let it rot there. Maybe I would have moved on quietly, but this was something else. This was erasure. I set my phone down on the table and walked to the hallway closet, pulled out the black file box I kept on the top shelf. Inside were 3 years of printed confirmations, bank statements, email threads, text messages. I laid them out across the dining table, month by month. January, February, March. A timeline of obligation, a record of silence. I didn't rush, I didn't curse, I just organized. If they wanted a public story, I would give them one. But this time, it would be accurate. I spent the next 2 hours building a timeline, not out of spite, out of precision. Every payment was documented already. I just hadn't needed to look at them side by side before. When you stack 36 confirmations in order, the pattern stops being abstract. It becomes undeniable. Date, amount, confirmation number. No gaps, no missed months. I cross-referenced the transfers with old text messages. Just this month. Ethan. We're short. Please don't let the bank send anything official. We'll make it up to you. They never did. My phone buzzed again mid-afternoon. Jenna. A cousin on my dad's side. We weren't especially close, but she was the designated tech person in the family, the one who made slideshows for birthdays and anniversary dinners. You should probably know, she said when I answered. Her voice was tight. Your parents are planning a family appreciation dinner in Austin next month. I didn't interrupt. It's kind of centered around Claire, she continued. They asked me to build a slideshow. They're calling her the reason the house was saved. There it was. Official. Public. Framed. I looked down at the papers spread across my table. Send me the file, I said. She hesitated. Ethan, are you sure? Yes. When the slideshow arrived that evening, I opened it without emotion. Photos of Claire on the porch. Claire holding a folder. Claire smiling between my parents like she'd signed something monumental. Captions underneath our anchor. Our strength in hard times. The one who stepped up. I created a copy of the file. Then I added what they'd left out. A clean bar chart. 3 years of payments, a simple timeline, month after month, screenshots of messages, names blurred, dates visible, and one final slide, a photo of the house underneath it. In plain text, the truth deserves a place, too. I saved it to my laptop, to the cloud, and to a USB drive I slid into my jacket pocket. I wasn't preparing to argue. I was preparing to correct the record. By the time the dinner arrived, I had already moved to Austin. The transfer at work had been in motion for months. New regional oversight, bigger territory, better compensation. I signed the lease on a high-rise apartment overlooking the Colorado River 2 weeks before the event. Clean lines, floor-to-ceiling windows, minimal furniture, no history in the walls. For the first time in my life, I walked into a space that wasn't tied to anyone else's expectations. The invitation came from my mother 3 days before the dinner. Family appreciation night. Dress nicely. 7 p.m., no apology, no mention of the banner, no acknowledgement of the conversation that had fractured everything, just a time and place. The restaurant sat on the top floor of a downtown building. All glass and amber light. Private dining room, long table, white tablecloths, wine already breathing in decanters when I arrived. I paused outside the doorway for a second. Inside, my parents stood near the head of the table greeting relatives. Claire wore emerald green. Poised and composed, a small crowd had gathered around her already. Cameras out, smiles wide, ceremony energy. I stepped in without announcement and took a seat near the back. No one noticed at first. That felt familiar. My father eventually tapped a glass with a fork. The room settled. We're here tonight, he began. Voice amplified slightly through a rented microphone. To honor someone who stepped up when this family needed it most. He turned toward Claire, our daughter. Claire. Applause. Warm. Confident, assured. She helped us navigate difficult financial waters. She kept our family home secure when we thought we might lose it. More applause. Claire lowered her eyes modestly. Practiced humility. The lights dimmed slightly. The slideshow began. Her photo on the porch. Her holding paperwork. Her smiling between my parents. Caption after caption constructing a narrative I knew intimately because I had funded it. I sat still, hand resting lightly against the USB drive in my pocket. They had built a stage. Now all that was left was the correction. The slideshow moved exactly the way they designed it. Soft piano music under warm photographs. Claire on the porch. Claire at the dining table with paperwork spread in front of her. Claire standing between my parents while they looked at her like she'd pulled them out of a burning building. Caption: our strength during uncertain times. Another slide. The one who protected our home. A few relatives wiped at their eyes. Someone murmured, "That's beautiful." I let it play. Right up until the final stage photo, Claire smiling into the camera. My parents holding her arms like proof of something sacred. Then the screen flickered. A small glitch. Barely noticeable, the image dissolved. In its place appeared a clean white slide, a bar chart. 36 vertical lines. Dates along the bottom. Dollar amounts on the side. 3 years of payments. My name attached to every one. The room went still. No music. No murmuring. Just the low hum of the projector. Another slide. A timeline, month after month, listed without commentary. No adjectives. No praise. Just data. Then screenshots of text messages. Names blurred. Dates visible. Just this month. Please don't let the bank send a notice. We'll figure it out soon. A collective shift moved through the room like a draft. I stood up. I didn't rush. I didn't raise my voice. I walked toward the front while the final slide appeared. A photo of the house. Under it. One sentence. The truth deserves a place, too. I turned to face the room. If the truth makes anyone uncomfortable tonight, I said evenly. That's not my problem. My father stared at me like I'd stepped out of a story he didn't know how to finish. Ethan. He started, reaching for the microphone. We can talk about this. We are, I said. Claire's face had lost all color. Her hands trembled slightly at her sides. For 3 years, I continued. Calm and clear. I paid that mortgage, every month, not once, not occasionally, every month. No anger, no theatrics. Just fact. You said Claire kept this house in the family, I added. Looking at my parents. She didn't. Whispers broke out. 3 years. He paid all of that. I knew something didn't add up. Claire finally spoke, her voice tight. I didn't ask them to say that. You didn't correct it, I replied. That landed harder. My mother stepped forward, desperation creeping into her expression. We didn't want to embarrass you, she said. A quiet breath left my nose. Embarrass me, I repeated. By telling the truth. No one answered. The projector light reflected off the glass behind me, casting my shadow long across the table. I don't want the house, I said. I don't want credit. I want the record straight. Silence again. My father's shoulders sagged. Claire looked smaller without the spotlight. The narrative they'd rehearsed had collapsed under a handful of dates and numbers. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt finished. You don't get to build a lie out of my silence, I said. Not anymore. No applause followed. No dramatic confrontation, just reality settling over the room like dust after something heavy falls. I stepped away from the screen, and for the first time in that family, I wasn't standing in anyone's shadow. No one tried to block the door when I walked away from the screen. That surprised me. I could hear fragments of whispered conversations behind me as I moved through the private dining room. Chairs scraping, low, urgent voices, my father calling my name once uncertain, not commanding. I didn't turn around. At the entrance, I paused just long enough to face them one last time. I didn't do this to hurt anyone, I said, voice steady. I did it because I won't be erased. No accusation. No performance. Just a boundary. Claire looked like she wanted to say something. My mother's composure had cracked completely. My father stared at the floor. I'm not here for the house, I added. And I'm not here for applause. I'm here because silence isn't consent. Then, I stepped out into the Austin night. The air was cooler than I expected. Clean. Wide. As the door shut behind me, something inside my chest loosened. This wasn't revenge. Revenge wants someone to suffer. This was release. And for the first time in years, I could breathe without carrying anyone else's story on my back. 2 days after the dinner, there was a knock on my apartment door, late afternoon. Sun cutting across the hardwood, the city quiet in that in-between hour before traffic builds again. I looked through the peephole. My parents stood side by side in the hallway. They looked smaller. Not physically, just diminished, like something had been taken from them and they weren't sure how to get it back. I opened the door. No one spoke at first. They stepped inside slowly, glancing around the apartment. The floor-to-ceiling windows, the clean lines, the absence of family photos. This place had no history for them to stand on. My mother was the first to speak. "We're sorry," she said, voice thinner than I'd ever heard it. "We were wrong. We let it become something it shouldn't have." My father nodded. "We should have told the truth from the start." I waited. There's a difference between apology and repair. I wanted to see which one this was. "We talked to a lawyer." My father continued. "We want to add your name to the deed. The house should reflect what you did." There it was, the offer. Paper in exchange for principal. I let the silence stretch before answering. "I don't need the house," I said. "I never did." My mother's hands trembled slightly. "But you earned it." "I earned honesty," I replied. "And I earned respect. A deed doesn't fix 3 years of pretending." They didn't argue, for once. "I'm not angry," I added, calm. "But I'm not going back to how it was. If we rebuild anything, it starts with the truth, not paperwork." My father looked at me like he was seeing me clearly for the first time. Not as the reliable son, not as the backup plan. Just as a man who had drawn a line. When they left, the apartment felt lighter, not because they'd apologized, but because I hadn't needed what they offered. I stood on my balcony long after they left. Austin's skyline stretched out in front of me, glass, steel, light. The river cut through the city like a clean line. Cars moved, people moved, life kept going. For years, I thought keeping the peace meant staying quiet. It doesn't. Silence doesn't protect you. It rewrites you. I didn't break my family that night in the restaurant. I broke the version of the story where I existed only as support. Only as backup. Only as the one who could handle it. Choosing myself didn't make me disloyal. It made me visible. If you've ever carried something in silence while someone else got the credit, you already know what that feels like. You don't have to explode, but you don't have to disappear either. If this story resonated with you, share your experience below. I read every comment, and subscribe if you want more stories about drawing lines and keeping them.